What's up?
We're all here, okay, we're full force, guys. We're just talking about. All right, Ruben is doing a nice snack, catching up on the day's vitamins and nutrients.
Well, my wife just finished cooking dinner and it's hot now.
Well, in that case, if you give me a good opening for cooking dinners, we're gonna talk about Rav Kook. So let's see. This is let me start. I'm gonna start by 14 minutes. Hopefully, I'll try to make it on time, and then we'll do a discussion. But Rav Kook. This is I show you. I read the book. I read the book some time ago, maybe several years ago, a year ago. I don't know. And this is Rav Kook picture. And Rav Kook is my personal favorite. I have such an affinity for him. I love the man. And it's interesting, interesting personality. And I wanted to connect my own feelings to the book. The book is written by Yehuda Mirsky. Yehuda Mirsky is I'm reading it back. It says visionary, right? Outstanding rabbinic leader. Yehuda Mirsky, former U.S. State Department official, is a professor of Near Eastern and Judaic studies, teaching Jewish thought, Israel study, and human rights at Brandeis University. And of course, in Beersheba, Ben Gurion University, there's also Department of Jewish Thought. And I know very, 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 very nice, knowledgeable Professor Emeritus Danny Lasker that lives not too far from here. Also retired a couple of years ago from that department. So anyway, so Rav Kook, we have in our mini series, we talk about Kabbalah. We made presentation. There was a presentation on Rashi. Reuven, your camera cut your head a little bit. Maybe adjust the camera. We see only the top of your head. Okay, now we see you better. We did presentation on Rambam, David's favorite. We're looking forward to go on to get maybe Ramban and then Lubavitcher Rebbe and whoever comes to mind. But Rav Kook, just in my 14 minutes, I have to summarize it very briefly. Obviously, the book is very good. Rav Kook, a mystic in a time of revolution. Basically, Rav Kook, what did I put the note here? He was born in 1865, died in 1935. Born in Poland.
We did Ramban.
We did Rambam.
We did Ramban.
We didn't do Nachmanides. Rambam, Maimonides, we did. Actually, two people made presentations. So, okay. So he was in yeshiva of Voloshin Yeshiva, which is famous, very religious, highly religious guy. I would call him maybe ultra-Orthodox, very observant, the guy who just knows Torah and Torah, Chumash, writings, everything, Kabbalah, mystic and poet, they say in writing. It was a very controversial figure. When he came to Israel in early 1900s, at that time, when you think about Israel 1900s, you learn a lot from this book, reading the two. There was a Zionist was coming to Israel, non-Zionist coming to Israel, religious Zionist was coming in, religious people, anti-Zionist was coming to Israel. There was a mishmash of people, and also Europe was coming close to the Hitler in the next maybe a couple of decades. So the people coming to Israel were received with a mixed emotions. Some people welcome them. Listen, if our brothers coming escaping from a Russian pogroms or coming Hitlerism, of course they're welcome. I don't care if they're Chiloni, Dati, Semite, this, Semite, that, they just come. But some was saying, well, they're Zionists. Like in Jerusalem, a lot of ultra-religious people say they're Zionists, they're anti-God, they're screwing things up, they're very negative. And they're an opposite, completely opposite opinion. So Rabbi Kook was a highly religious guy, but he was very kind person. He would go to kibbutzim. He'll talk to people. He had good friends among Hilanim. Even in kibbutzim, who purposely work on Shabbat. Not just they work on Shabbat because they have to, but they purposely, that's dafka, point out, they don't care about God. To them he talk. Even most of religious establishment will tell him, Yeshuv would tell him, just, these guys are sellouts. They're off the derek. They're completely, what are you doing? So he would walk and he would befriend them, and he would walk to the streets of Jerusalem, and super religious guys, young children, young teenagers will throw dirty water in his face. So he was taking a lot of abuse for all he was trying to do to show kindness and love to every Jew. Everybody knew everybody respected him, however, for his knowledge, for his observancy, for him being a good person. But anyway, an interesting quote in a book I found, I was going to read to you. It says, on the page 2, it says, I have to read it to you guys, this page 2. His life was riddled with contradiction. The greatest theologian of religious Zionism. He never joined Zionist movement. A man who lived a life of strictest ultra-Orthodox observance. He welcomed heresy as a cleansing bonfire whose embers would yield a new revelation. You know, I mean, I can't tell you like personally how I cannot relate it less. He had also said, let's see.
They say at the level of Atzilus, there's no difference between good and evil. It's all just goodness from God. So maybe he was at that level.
He was, kindness.
He didn't see like somebody's heretic, somebody's doesn't want to keep Shabbos. He didn't see, like, he only saw the Jew. It's like a Baal Shem Tov.
Yes,
I think if he had lived more in the era of the Rebbe and the Rebbe's influence, maybe he wouldn't have gotten such a hassle, because the Rebbe was very much.
He died in 1935. Of course, he didn't see it in the beginning of the war, Second World War. And maybe God spared him from that. Eventually, he went to Europe. He spent some time in England. He spent some time in Germany. Anyway, but I want to link it to something else. I have a book on the Who is Who in Talmud, and in it, one of my favorite, I'm going to link it, my favorite personages of Talmud is Elisha ben Avua. Maybe you guys know who it is. Acher.
Yeah, Elisha ben Abuya. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't he in Abacoros?
He saw a man climbing to get the bird and to fulfill the mitzvah of chasing the mother bird and taking the youngs. He fell through the tree. I'm simplifying this example, a little more to it. And he died. And Elisha said, what kind of God is this? The guy is trying to make a mitzvah and he gets killed. What is it? So he went heretic because of that. But despite of that, Rabbi Meir, the great Rabbi Meir, was his student. Of course, Rabbi Elisha, he is a contemporary Rabbi Akiva, third generation Tana. And Rabbi Meir, it says here, his pupil, Rabbi Meir, continued to study with him even after he left the path of Torah. Rabbi Meir's devotion for Elisha, despite the later loss of faith, was described in the following manner. On one Shabbat, Elisha was riding on his horse, and Rabbi Meir was walking behind him to learn Torah. Just think about it, guys, a heretic who everybody turned away from. Rabbi Meir is walking and he's teaching. He is teaching Rabbi Meir Torah. And at one point, Elisha said, Meir, turn back. Since I have measured with my horse footsteps that until here, this is Tachum Shabbos, the boundary beyond which is forbidden to go. Rabbi Meir said, you too turn back. Elisha said, have I not told you already that I have heard from behind the veil? Return, you backsliding children, except for Acher. So he's saying, I heard from God that I'm out. I'm a heretic. But I heard from God that I'm heretic, and I agree. I don't believe on all this stuff. God is like, what is doing? So anyway, when he was dying, Rabbi Meir was by his bedside, the dying man, torn by the feelings and emotions of injustice in the world. and he see that God didn't do anything about it, and whether he is philosophical or not philosophical or not, he's showing his feelings. And Rabbi Meir sat by his bed when he was dying, and he's like hold his hand. And then, of course, when he died, he said something. And Rabbi Meir listened to it. He said, I think he repented. It doesn't matter whether he repented or not repented, but I tell you, this is also the personage in our history that I personally just completely love. I love him. I absolutely admire the guy, not because he's heretic, not heretic, because that's how the person expresses his true feelings. This is how I feel.
You're talking about, wait a minute, you're talking about Elisha ben Abuya?
Elisha Abuya, yeah, the heretic.
Yeah.
I mean, if he was alive right now, I would probably come to him and be his best friend. The third thing I want to mention to you is I have a friend, and David knows him very. You met him in our Russian Torah studies, Mikhail, 85-year-old guy. He's a little bit older than me, certainly a lot older than David. He's got his wife he lives in where we were when Helene and I took Ulpan. There's also living, I forget, by the Australian cemetery there. There's a little Ulpan, and people live there. Not Australian part, but the cemetery where Australian soldiers are buried.
Oh, the Australia, okay.
Right there,
Park,
there's his wife is handicapped. She doesn't feel good. He's got two children, the daughter, who's been for 5 years in coma in Ashdod, and he goes and visits her every day, every week. His son, about 60 maybe, recently contracted cancer and died from cancer.
Who is this?
Mikhail, you don't know him, but it's a Russian guy who I met on Ulpan.
Yeah.
When we studied our classes in Russian Torah, he walked by the class, he heard us talking, he says, hey, can I come in too? I said, sure. So he came in, he became our student, and Victor and I continue studying to this day. So when that happened, he called me and he said, Lev, how do I say Kaddish? What do I do? So I came over to him, I visited him. And he was sitting there with a bottle of vodka and a little bit of food. And he wanted to know how to do it. And he says, I'm a very strong man, but it's difficult for me. And he was like, couldn't control his emotions. And for me, even to think that it's difficult for me to go through that. And then he called me a couple of days later and he says, how do we do it, Lev? We want to get together a couple of people, family and close friends, and do what in Russian they call paminki, which is like Christians do it. It's like remembering the dead. Russians do it. It's not exactly a Jewish custom, but it's the best way he knows. And he says, when can I do it? And I give him advice, maybe do it at home. I said, don't do it in a restaurant somewhere. Just do it at home, small group. What can I tell you? Anyway, they ordered a place in Old City on Saturday at 1 o'clock. It was like 2 Saturdays ago. He said, Lev, if you can come on Saturday, can you come? It's non-kosher place. I came. I said, of course I came. I came with a bottle of water. And I sat there. And people stand up. And it was big, typical Russian things, a lot of sausages and kolbases and vodka and this and that. Not champagne, because it's not a festive occasion. And they just buried his son. His wife sitting there crying. He's sitting there holding up. His granddaughter was there, a couple of close friends. And people stood up, and with the tears in the eyes, they said some nice words about his son, about the family. And he came to me and says, Lev, would you like to say a couple of things? So I stood up and I also said a couple of things to them. And what I told him is this. And I might have mentioned to you guys this story. I said there was a story that Israeli soldier is killed, and his good friends, good buddies, go to cemetery. And they go to cemetery, typical Israelis, Helanim, non-religious, they come to the cemetery, two guys, pull the kippah from their pocket, as typical Israelis have a kippah, but you never know when you need a kippah in your pocket. Takes the kippah, put it on their hand, come to the grave, and say Kaddish. And a couple Hasidim, I don't know, Hasidim, Haredi, some religious people, Yeshiva Bacharim, coming by, see these two guys saying Kaddish. They go to their rabbi, say, Rabbi, this guy saying Kaddish. You can't say Kaddish if there's no minyan. Because this guy, what's wrong with these guys? And the rabbi looked at them and says, guys, there's two ways to look at everything. One way to do exactly what you said. And another way to say, look at these guys, their best friend just died. He was killed in battle, in soldier. These guys don't go to synagogue. They hardly know any halacha. They don't know much about the Torah, but they know. They don't know about minyan, but they know when your best friend is killed, you have to say Kaddish. And that is how you look at, that's how you have to look at life. And when I said Kaddish in the restaurant, there was only 8 guys, 7 maybe, 7. There was like maybe 14, 15 people, 7 guys, 7 ladies, something like this. So I said to the waiter, do you have, and it was only like empty restaurant, just 18 of us. I said, is anybody else with a couple of guys? And the guy said, yeah. The guy, I get a cook from the kitchen. He gets a cook to the kitchen, and we had like 9 people. Maybe the guy was also in the kitchen. We might have had 10, but I saw 9. And I said, I'm going to say Kaddish. And if I don't have minyan, I'll still say Kaddish. And I said Kaddish, and I think we had 9 people. And if I have to do it again, I'll do it again. Have no regret.
Hashem's the 10th.
Hashem's the 10th. So I said the Kaddish, and I told you about the soldiers. I told you about the Elisha ben Avua, Acher, and I mentioned about Rav Kook. And I think that's what the world is missing today. I went to the lecture yesterday. I told Reuben today. The lecture was in English in Rambam Synagogue, which is a lot of Anglos, Americans, South Africans. And in this, there was 3 presenters. There was Rabbi Yoni Rosenweg, Rabbi, Professor Rael Strauss, psychologist, and Sarit Chaim Kritora, the lady who is mental health social worker at the Yotzet Halacha at Nismat. And they talk about when the mental health and halacha cross paths. And they talk about how people can be OCD, obsessive compulsive, that they say they're so religious. They talk about observant people, Haredi. The guy is so observant, he washes his hands. They say, well, did I wash it enough? I missed this figure. So he washes it again. And I think I started for the left hand, should start for the right. He does it again. He goes for half an hour, keep washing his hands. Obsessive compulsive.
I knew a young guy who was a rabbi like that. He was obsessive compulsive, and he'd walk. So he'd sit by this thing sometimes for an hour, and his hands were starting to get like.
So he talks about that, and he discussed that, and then Rabbi talked about it, and I actually asked a question, and my wife looked at me like, "You asked a question, I call you to ask questions." I raised a hand and I asked the question. I said, Rabbi, I asked Rabbi. Rabbi said, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not the psychoanalyst. I just Rabbi. And people ask me sometimes, halacha, if I don't feel good, if I have a psychological issue, and the only thing that calms me down is I can listen to the music on my phone. Can I listen to Shabbat on the music? And he says, sure you do. And then he says to the audience, because you have to think about the human being. You can't just say, well, you cannot turn the phone, you push a button, there's electricity, and according to the Talmud, Sanhedrin, page 74, it says, this is, knock it off. Tell all this out. So after he talked about this, he combined the human element between religion and between feelings. And I said to him, Rabbi, I have a problem. Can I ask you a question? And everybody looked at my wife and says, what the heck are you talking about? I said, on the Shabbat, I have a very difficult time to fall asleep without air conditioning. My wife cannot stand air conditioning, and I can't stand the heat. And it's significant, not a little bit. So if I turn the air conditioner on, I can sleep normal, but my wife just can't stand it. I turn it off, and then I sweat, I don't have a good night's sleep. Can I turn the air conditioner on? Have it controlled by me, turn it on, and people say, well, why don't you use a timer? I said, this is not a timer. I'm sleeping for 2 hours, nice and comfortable. But the air conditioner is not working. I had it running before I went to sleep, but I had it running. Now it's getting warmer and warmer and warmer. I'm waking up. I can't put a timer on when I don't feel hot and cold. And he says, well, and he kind of smiled, and he says this and this and this. And he was saying, he didn't ask my question. And I said to him, Rabbi, and then people say, well, what does it have to do with mental? We're talking about this is mental, this is physical. I said, well, it drives me crazy. There has to be somebody who's a mental. This drives me crazy, guys. I said, I've never looked at me. There's like probably have 50, 60 people in the audience. And I said, and he finished that with a smile, with a real nice smile. And I said, Rabbi, I have to thank you. You know what? You didn't answer my question, but you didn't say no. You didn't say no to me. I appreciate that. I'll leave it at that. So I'm going to finish my presentation, my 14 minutes. I actually did it probably like maybe 18. Rav Kook, Acher, Elisha ben Aviucha, Michael, my friend, the Israeli soldiers, the meeting I just went. And it all comes to me that this is the times. Oh, and by the way, I also was on a Zoom meeting one time, and the guy, Rabbi, presented this recently, a week ago. Rabbi was presenting, he said, there's not enough discussions this day, many for centuries, about Agada. It's all halacha, 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 halacha. I said to them, maybe it's a problem. And he said, well, but I can understand. Why? Because halacha held us together. We survived for 2,000 years because of halacha, because you said, no, on Saturday, I'm not going to do this. And if they kill me, they kill me. And I did this. And they went to death. I went to the burners, and yet they hold halacha. And I thought about it, and I said, that's one way of looking to it. Maybe strict observance, like Vilna Gaon, observance strictly. And Lubavitch Rebbe came around, L'chaim, have a good time. Don't study that much halacha. Study, but also have L'chaim once in a while. Don't see grim in a basement with the lights turned off and studying like this all day long. Have a little life. And Vilna Gaon wanted to excommunicate Rebbe because this is Hasidim, this is Chabad, Hasidim, and they were blasphemers. That's what Vilna Gaon said. So that role kept us apart. And I thought to myself, I said, wait a minute, one way to look at it, maybe the strict observance to the Torah in a halacha way, maybe it did held us together for years. But maybe it delayed our redemption for 2,000 years. Maybe if we had lightened up a little bit earlier, maybe we would have had a third temple 2,000 years ago, 1,900 years ago. Maybe if we didn't go to the strict fanatism, and let me be, I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like a heretic about it, but if we didn't go by this thing, no, you have to go on the right side of the street, you have to gaze down because don't look at the women, do this like that. If we don't go to some of the silly situations that, with all good intentions, our history bestowed upon us, if we had a little bit of a compassion to another human being, to see the person standing by the grave without minyan saying the Kaddish, if you see in that the light of Hashem, I think, to me, it would have been a better world. So I like the company of Rav Kook, and of Elisha, and of Michael, and of those two soldiers, and of course you guys. And this is what I want to share with you guys today.
Well, I just wanna say that the custom of saying Kaddish in Minyan is only 700 years old, and I think it was Harosh who basically, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Harosh who basically sort of decided, or how should I say, made it sort of a halacha, sort of psika, to say Kaddish in Minyan, because there was, if I'm not mistaken, there was there was a thing that people would start saying Kaddish because of the pogroms and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, and there was a fear that there was a fear that because of many things, persecutions and all of that, that people will not go to the synagogue and things like that, and the community sort of will maybe a little bit dissolve or somehow.
Yeah, like if I can say Kaddish by myself at home, why to go to synagogue for the minyan?
Exactly. And he said, if there's, in order to still have a minyan and to still have people praying together in the synagogue and going to the synagogue and to read the Torah on Shabbat and all that, the Kaddish is will have to be said only with a minyan,
Mhm.
whether it's in a synagogue or not. But
Yeah.
the thing was that basically to keep people coming to the synagogue so the Jewish community or communities do not sort of, you know,
Fall apart. Yeah.
dissolve or a little bit sort of deteriorate or something.
Well, this is such an important and great point you just brought out, Dave. It's an excellent point, and I think what you're saying, what the way I hear this is like.
So no, so what I wanted to say is that, sorry, Lev,
Go
is
ahead,
that
go ahead.
it's just you know, it's it's not a halacha from Sinai. It was made by Harosh. So,
But
like, if you're really, 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 um, I don't know, if say if you're in a situation, okay, like with the situation with Misha, or the situation like with those two Israeli soldiers who didn't know what to do. The only thing they knew was to say Kaddish, that because this is what you say. This is the prayer that you say for the dead.
yeah,
Then it's not such, it's not such a big sin, if I could put it this way.
I
Uh,
think it's no sin at all, because I think when I was
yeah,
there, David, when I was at Misha's at the funeral, not funeral, after funeral, I think I was looking in the face of God. Being there, I thought I was just sitting directly witnessing God right in front of me. With
yeah,
all these people, with not knowing not a single religious ceremony, trying the best I could, I was
yeah,
surrounded by Hashem Almighty. And I think with Elisha, when he did also, I think that the same feeling comes in. And I think, right, Dave, I think, yes, I'm not trying to say halacha is for nothing. Halacha is good, but for every rule, there's always exception. There's always
yeah,
exception. Say in these cases,
right,
don't be a fanatic to understand this is a very situation special. So don't take it lightly. But if you see something, don't rush to judge. And I tell you, looking on myself, I bring it up many times, because when I was going to my own education in religion, when I came from Russia with nothing as far as religion is concerned. I came to the point that I would not go. I would say I would not go to the synagogue, like to the restaurant, because that's not kosher restaurant. It's ayin morah, right? That's how you say ayin morah. Somebody sees me coming to synagogue. Why did Lev? Oh, guess what? I just saw Lev on Shabbat coming from a Russian restaurant, and I think I saw a couple of bubliks hanging from his mouth. Look, some kind of religious guy he is. So that's the, and I would not go. I mean, 20 years ago, I would not go, and I realized that what an idiot I was. How I was influenced. And the thing I have to say, this is what Rabbi Kook comes to mind. Why would I do not blame I should blame rabbis. Rabbis have also their limitations, and they're human beings. But now when you called me by the hand and told me 20 years ago, knock it off, Lev. Don't be such a high holy roll. Don't be like holier than thou.
Well, you were a Vilna Gaon type, and now you're a Rav Kook type.
Now I became to Vilna Gaon type, but very quickly, and without really knowing. And I also found out, gentlemen, that I find that when I ask halachic questions, like David just put nail on hand, 90%, 95% of people, even rabbis, when I ask this question, really don't know. What David said, most of I probably wouldn't even know. Like I said, 700 years ago, they don't know. So if you don't know that, guys, why don't you just tell me, Lev, I don't really know. You're welcome to come and study and learn. I learn with you. But if your cousin coming to dinner and your wife is saying, or your brother is saying, don't invite him for dinner because on Pesach he invites his cousin who is not Jewish, and that's a desecration of the Pesach to have a non-Jew at the table. How do you know? What the heck is wrong with you?
Who said that?
Yeah, there is some notion in America, and it's a misnotion, but people take something has no foundation in reality and make it sound like, well, you cannot invite non-Jew for Pesach. It doesn't say that anyway. So I many times my own example.
No. It does say that in the Torah.
No, on the Pesach, but not when we do it now. We're now not doing Pesach sacrifice. This is just a tradition to remember Pesach. This is when we do a Pesach offering, when the temple comes, when you have, then that's true. Torah said that. But today, this Pesach, if your friend, non-Jew, comes to do, you can invite him to the table. That's not against halacha, because we're not doing, in fact, we're not allowed to eat roasted lamb, roasted food on Pesach, we're not allowed to eat. Because to show this is not a Pesach we're just doing a ritual, a tradition to remember it, but it's not ritual. So non-Jew can participate, and especially if this is my wife's cousin, what an idiot can be to say, I'm sorry, honey, you can't invite him because he's not Jewish. Wait a minute, not gonna do it. We didn't learn this. So I find out that most rabbis don't know, and it causes friction, it causes problems. For what? For not knowing the single fact. Okay.
Right, okay. Go ahead, Ruben.
No, there was a point. I spoke to a Kabbalist once who said that there's a Kabbalistic opinion that the reason we have the exile so long is that when Jews were exiled from the temple, they got into this super, kind of atherosclerotic attitude of just being following everything by the book and being rigid and everything's halacha. And they sort of, they say is they exile the Shekhinah from Jewish life, the mystical part, the intuitive part.
Mm-hmm.
Since we exiled the Shekhinah, we were exiled.
Yeah.
And when we receive the Shekhinah again, when we start studying, Chassidus, Kabbalistic ideas, being open to meditation and intuition and that kind of thing, then we welcome the Shekhinah back, so we'll be welcomed back.
Amen. By the way, Elul second, this is the month of Elul. Elul second is a Elul.
Can I just add something?
Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So I'm going to say something explosive.
Go ahead.
And your computers will completely explode.
As if it's anything new to us.
About two things. So one is about the what Ruben said about the exile, is that actually the Romans did not exile the Jews. There was no active, how do you call it?
Expulsion.
What?
Expelling them out, pushing them out. Like,
there was
expulsion,
no active
deportation.
Yeah, Jews left because they felt that if the temple was destroyed, then they have basically God left them, and this is why this exile is not like the first one. It's sort of
self-imposed.
It's almost a voluntary exile from Israel, and that's the biggest tragedy of this exile. Now, the second thing about the Kaddish, because before, the Kaddish was a sort of a short prayer, and as you know, the words of the Kaddish, the actual text of the Kaddish, has absolutely nothing to do with dead people.
Yes,
it's only a praise to God.
Yes,
and it was just being like recited, right, or being sort of said after learning the Mishnah, learning the Talmud, after the when you sit in the yeshiva and you learn with friends, you finish a masechet or you finish your daily. You finish your daily study and you say Kaddish. And it doesn't matter if the Chavruta could be 4 people and they still said Kaddish. I mean, so because that was one of the ways they sort of finished the day's studying. So it doesn't matter if there was like 4 or 5 people or 30 people learning together. They said the Kaddish. And so what about all those not Tanaim but Amoraim who and those who came after them before Harosh made it halacha to say it only in Minyan? Did they sin because of saying the Kaddish in a group of 3 after finishing the Masechet? Of course not. So it's it's a thing that that's the good thing, I think, in Judaism, that at least in my view of Judaism, There's many things that you definitely are not going to burn in hell forever for doing, unlike in
Well,
Christianity.
and this is why I like, that's why our group, that's why we call our group the Perplexed. And one thing I personally like about our discussion, all of us, because we are very open. We can talk about our own hangups, that somebody has anxiety, another one has OCD, another have a BBC, another one CCN, whatever we have. 99% of humanity has something like that. And we talk about and one guy comes in and he's agnostic. Another guy he calls himself something else. The guy another, there's a Hasidim, there's a non-religious, and everyone's welcome. So we essentially, I think, we're carrying the legacy of Rav Kook in our own presentations with love to approach to each other. We're interested in other views and opinions without saying, how can you possibly think that? What's wrong with you? That's how the person feels. I want to say again, he welcomed heresy as a cleansing bonfire whose embers would yield a new revelation. I'm not saying heresy is good, but I'm saying this is open-mindedness. And I'm finding also when, like, many times, actually, when Adrian, too bad Adrian didn't come in today, when Adrian asks questions, I don't believe this guy's Torah was given on Sinai. You guys believe this? I don't, so I don't have anything in common. I like his questions because many times he asks his question, I don't have an answer. So he's pushing us, he challenges us to really know, not just claim we think we know. So Elul second, it's a Yortzeit Elul. Today's month of Elul. A couple of days ago on Elul second, it was Yortzeit of, and I want to read something that he wrote. And he was a poet. He was very romantic guy. He was very like naive, sort of like very pure, angelic. This is what he said. This is a little bit English that I don't even get myself to do it because it's like almost Shakespeare in English. This is what he wrote in Pinkesei Hariyah and Olat Re'iyah, Abraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook. The ceaseless prayer of the soul strives ever to emerge from hiding into the open, to spread over all the living energies of all, the spirit and soul, and the forces of the body entire. So it is that all of Torah and its wisdom is a ceaseless revelation of the hidden prayer of the soul. I mean, I had to read it, I still don't fully get it, but I emotionally just relate to how he wanted to express himself, like he wanted to give himself completely to the Jewish people, regardless of their political, religious, ethnical, whatever beliefs, just believing that the future Hashem will sort it all out.
Rav Kook gave a blessing to the Bezalel Academy in Jerusalem, which is an academy for the arts, for painting and sculpting, and he gave them the blessing. He said, "Oh, yeah, great. Let's make a great school for the arts in Jerusalem." Rav Kook.
Yeah.
He gave them the blessing.
It's a great man, guys.
I think he was the one who put the mezuzah in Bezalel, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think so.
Baruch Hashem. Guys, 45 seconds left. We're going to finish this lesson. Thank you for everybody's comment, Reuven, David, and hopefully other people who might watch it it will be a message to them, not just watching. That we have to be tolerant to each other. We have to be loving to each other. We can't become holy rollers. Let Hashem do his job and let us do our job and not something else. For next time, if you think of another presenter, let's think about something. Maybe Lubavitcher Rebbe, maybe Einstein, I don't know. Whatever we can do next, we'll talk next time. Guys, in the meantime, Shabbat Tov and then Shabbat Shalom. Love you. Let's stay in touch.
Bye, Reuven.
Next Tuesday at 8 o'clock is all time.
Bye-bye.